Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Departed, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg, Ray Winstone, Martin Sheen, Vera Farmiga, Kevin Corrigan, Anthony Anderson, and Alec Baldwin, directed by Martin Scorsese. And yes, here's my title that I almost said at the beginning, The Departed, because this movie is set in Boston. So, I have seen this quite a few times in my life. Is it as great as I remembered? Let's get into it and we'll see. The movie is set in Boston with an Irish gangster named Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson, giving a young Colin Sullivan groceries and comic books as he comes off as a father to Colin as he gives him work to get a little extra money until he grows up in the police academy as an adult, being played by Matt Damon, taking a test and training to become a cop while working for Frank. And another class is Billy Constigan, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, as well as Brown, played by Anthony Anderson. What the fuck is Anthony Anderson doing in this movie as they graduate from the police academy and get interviewed by Captain Queenan, played by Martin Sheen, and Sergeant Dignam, played by Mark Wahlberg, as they treat Colin rather well while Billy is getting treated rather roughly by Dignam, who's a fun character, and Frank is the guy who stole the movie for me, in my opinion, as I'm watching him for the whole movie as another character, Ellerby, played by Alec Baldwin, who's Colin's boss, and is another good character, as I love the characters as they're very entertaining to watch in the whole movie. As Leo's character, Billy, is a nervous wreck, but Leo doesn't sell it very well as the accent comes and goes, and Scorsese really needs to stop making Leo doing accents that he just can't fucking do. He has no family and goes to prison again to help serve as a cop, as the title of the movie shows up on the screen in about 18 and a half minutes into the movie, which is a little too late for a movie to do in my opinion. Billy visits his cousin Sean, played by Kevin Corrigan, and does a couple of jobs with him and meets Mr. French, played by Ray Winstone, after beating up a guy who says to Billy if he has his period, asking for a cranberry juice. And Leo, unfortunately, doesn't scare me as much as Robert De Niro in any movie directed by Scorsese. Meanwhile, the other actors are giving such great performances in this movie. Colin meets Madeline, played by Vera Farmiga, in the elevator, and he asks her out to dinner, and they go to a French restaurant and have such good chemistry with one another, and her performance is good at best, but unfortunately it's not great. Frank meets Billy for the first time, and as he searches him, including his arm, as he damaged earlier in the scene, is worse than he did at the convenience store. So does Frank with Billy's own shoe, or hits Billy with his own shoe. And the scene is rather fucking brutal as Frank walks out and teases someone and laughs like the Joker from the 1989 Batman film, which he played back in the day, as Frank is the funniest character in this entire movie, and sometimes brings up John Lennon to Billy, and that was one scene, I mean to say. And I do like the scene quite a bit, as Billy doesn't want to wear a wire and calls Queenan, and Dignam about it while spying on Frank. I love the line said by Mr. French, "If you don't make money, you're a douchebag." That's the line, as it could be inspiring time for the rich, but for me, it's kind of an assholish thing to say. Billy and Frank sit in a restaurant torments a sister in the church, which was rather strange. Colin pulls the criminal out of jail by turning off the microphone and the camera, as the motherfucker is a gangster pretending to be a cop, while Billy is a cop pretending to be a criminal for Frank. And that's a twist I didn't see coming on my first viewing until the end of the movie, but after watching it many times, it still works. Billy visits Madeline at her job as a psychiatrist for cops, and says to her he needs some pills and doesn't get a prescription until he walks out of the office and she gives him the prescriptions, while Queenan and Dignam meet with Billy, and Billy punches Dignam, and next thing you know, they get in a car together and talk some more about, and Queenan asks him to hang on a little longer as they're close, but not really, as it's going to take the entire movie while there's a rat in the police department and Frank's mafia guys. And this is a thrilling movie with very good performances. Colin comes into an investigation of catching Frank while he's doing a deal with some Chinese dealers, where Colin texts Frank and says turn off the cell phones as they deal with the Chinese. The cops have a blind spot on the cameras as Dignam says to the technician, I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy, and becomes the smartass while the criminals get away, and Ellerby punches the technician for fucking up the mission. And I just love the hell out of this scene. Billy meets Madeline at a restaurant, and she tells Billy she would lie to Colin if they're caught, like he brought up at the office. While she moves into Colin's apartment, Frank calls Colin, and Frank gets encountered by Queenan and Dignam as they threaten to catch him. And the funny thing about that scene is Frank is following the little girl Angels, as it cracks me up, and the dialogue cracks me up with while Mr. French throws dynamite in someone who's high's house and asks him to repeat what he said about the FBI. And the next scene, Billy gets to Queenan's house to talk with him about the case, and the next day, Billy has to fill out some paperwork while he can't stay for long, excuse me, and goes to Madeline's house and talks with her and have sexual intercourse while she's cheating on Colin, as I'd rather like her with Colin more than her with Billy. So I don't buy their relationship like I do with Madeline and Colin. Colin talks with Ellerby while he's playing golf and wants to propose to Madeline, as Billy follows Frank to a dirty movie theater, meaning they show a porno at this particular movie theater, let's say, and while Billy sends a text message to Dignam and Queenan, and that scene was amusing as I laughed out loud when Frank pulls out a dildo in front of Colin inside the theater, as it was a crack-up scene. And Billy follows Colin and unfortunately doesn't catch him to identify him as Colin, and Colin stabs a guy accidentally. And the movie is very well shot and also very well made, and the dialogue is tremendous. The scene where Frank says to Billy, I smell a rat, and cheese, you fucking rat, is absolutely hysterical, as I love the way Jack Nicholson acted in this scene, as he owns this movie right off the bat, where Billy says to Frank, he's not the fucking rat. As this is the second movie so far with Leo working with Scorsese, where the famous actors stole the movie from him. First one being Gigs in New York. As Leo may be cursed, Colin gets some hate from Dignam for stabbing a guy, which makes perfect sense. Frank gives Billy the night off as he works with some new guys, where Billy meets with Queenan, and Colin asks people to follow Queenan as he's led to believe he's up to something, and Queenan goes on top of the building with Billy as Billy finds out Queenan was followed by Frank's men. And Billy goes down the stairs, and Queenan is thrown off in the roof while Billy watches his death, and the cops versus the Irish gangsters shoot each other. And when it comes to the character, Billy is fucked now, which is completely intense. Dignam quits the force while beating up Colin briefly, as Ellerby gives him a leave of absence and decides to quit himself, as it could be the end of Dignam, except for the final minutes of the movie. And it's a shame, as I really liked the character, as he had one of the best lines with Jack Nicholson. As in the entire movie, Colin calls Billy and Queenan's phone without saying a damn word, which did rather feel intense, but the scene worked very well as an acting exercise. Tension is what I'll give it. Until Billy calls Colin back and is led to believe Colin is Frank's rat, while one of Frank's men named Delahunt is killed and acts like a cop, and Frank's men doesn't believe he's a cop, and the climax is about to begin, and all this is very thrilling and sometimes very funny as well. The cops follow Frank and his men while getting some cocaine and filling it in the truck. As they're about to leave, Frank and his men get stopped by the cops as people are dying at this point, and it is the climax of the movie, and we have to do it in an action thriller by Martin Scorsese, as the best character gets killed at this time as Frank is shot by Colin himself, which will lead to a twisty climax of the film. Colin gets to meet Billy as Billy asks for his identity back, and Billy finds out Colin is Frank's rat, and now Colin is fucked when it comes to someone knowing who he is as a gangster. And I thought, oh shit. He'll eventually tell the other cops, including Dignam, who he really is, and now I'm on the edge of my seat. Colin finds out Madeline is pregnant, and the next thing you know, Billy gives Madeline a tape that was recorded by Frank, and Madeline decides to break up with Colin as he's already a liar. And Colin meets Billy at the same place where Queenan died at, and gets beat up by Billy until Brown gets in as he didn't bring Dignam, and is trying to arrest Colin, and they go in the elevator as Billy gets shot by a man Colin gave advice to earlier in the film, and Brown is shot, and the next thing you know, he gets killed by Colin. And Billy's funeral takes place, and Madeline wishes to never speak to Colin ever again. And Colin comes home with some groceries and gets shot by Dignam, and the climax was very intense and very twisty, as M. Night Shyamalan will never do like this. Will never do like the next movie, Shutter Island, which I'll talk about next time. And the climax was also on the edge of your seat thrills for the final 30 minutes. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.9 out of 10. This movie is very well acted, well done, well made, as everything is good about the movie, this ends like a twist that M. Night Shyamalan will never pull off. I love the characters, as the two best characters are Frank and Dignam, but the performances are tremendous, as the script was written very well. I don't remember what ran against this movie at the Oscars the year it won Best Picture, but it deserves to give Scorsese his first Best Director and Best Picture Oscar, as this is a great movie to watch for the characters. So I would like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Shutter Island. What do you want to go there for? And until then, Matt Damon.